On today's show, was game 2 a wake-up call for Luka, Jalen Brunson, the Mavs coaches, or the Mavs front office? Or all of them? We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way that you can help grow the show is to comment below. This is a dangerous day to be asking for comments. So here we are. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor, writer at Mavs.com, the fourth quarter queen, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Oh, man. What a fourth quarter. Man, we said it before the series. We said it after game 1. We'll say it after game 2. The Suns are the best team in the league for a reason.
By far. Watching that Miami Heat team against the Sixers, I'm like, the Suns team is definitely the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, they're so dang good. 60, some percent again from the field tonight. Shout out to everybody. It's like, oh, they're going to shoot up 50 again. It's like, well, actually, they did better tonight. But
they shot 65 from the field, 52 from 3, and 86% from the line.
That's just insane. But you know what? We were talking right before this pod, and we're saying, kind of rundown of what this pod will look like. And we try to have some type of plan, most of our pods here. But, if the fourth quarter didn't happen like it did, we're sitting there breaking down this game, seeing what positives, seeing, here and there about some things. But the fourth quarter was a moment. It was a moment for the Mavs that it shouldn't leave their brains, all of them, for a long, long time, because that was just flat out embarrassing.
You take a look at this game, and the Mavericks were kind of hanging around. It's what this Suns team does. I've been calling it a sunburn on Locked On NBA all year, because they just let teams hang around, and they'll hang around, and they'll hang around, and then all of a sudden, in the fourth quarter, they just go on this blitz. Like they just all of a sudden go on an 11-0 run or a 20-5 run or something like that. They've been doing it to teams all year. It's just what they do. They're able to just ramp it up. I was watching that Heat Sixers game, and I was like waiting for the Heat to do that, because the Sixers defense without Joel Embiid is not that great. So I was just waiting for them to do this run, and they don't do that. But this Suns team does. They can take advantage of all these different matchups. Their starters basically just have no weakness. If Chris Paul and Devin Booker are going to shoot that well, going to play that well, even with Ayton in foul trouble, they didn't even need. Did he even play in the second half? Like they didn't even need him at all.
No.
And so it just came to that fourth quarter. It was 89. This is nuts. It was 89-86.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the fourth quarter, and the Mavericks were like right there. You felt it. They had a lead, for a decent amount of that second quarter. Like they're right there. This Mavericks team just needs a couple of threes to go their way, and that's what you were feeling in this. And then all of a sudden, it was just a Chris Paul takeover, and it didn't matter. And you can't say anything. The refereeing in this game was brutal. I don't know if anyone know if anyone got an advantage. There was all kinds of weird stuff to begin the game. There was fouls all over the place. You can't make any excuses in any way about that. It wasn't just like the Suns got a ton of calls their way. The Mavs got a bunch of calls their way too. And so now we look at, okay, was that fourth quarter just the Mavs running out of gas? Was it just, the Mavs gave them their best shot at the beginning of this game to get that lead, take that lead? The Mavs running out of players, Luka running out of gas because he's just putting so much into this game? Was it Jalen Brunson being overwhelmed because he struggles with length, and he has this season, even he's been really good this season and still struggle with length? Or is it, was it coaching that Dwight Powell's still playing in the game? Josh Green's getting minutes in this game. The leaving Dorian Finney-Smith in and getting in foul trouble. Like there's just all kinds of things, but it can be all those. Stuff can be two things, right? And yeah. I honestly think that this is a wake up call for everybody, and starting with Luka Doncic.
Yeah, we've been doing this pod ever since Luka came into the league. We joke that we're locked on Luka, a lot of times, and we've covered the best moments of Luka's career so far in the NBA.
Let's just take a moment and list those.
Yeah, let's
just to feel better about tonight.
You know, so yeah, if you don't want to hear me say anything negative about Luka, you can just push the fast forward a little bit, because I'm gonna be really honest for a second. I think this is a moment that Luka needs to take this tape, and this is what he just needs to watch all summer, because that fourth quarter was embarrassing for him. And it was embarrassing for he is a top 5 player in the NBA. And there's a reason why all of these franchises, when they do all the polls of like who you want to start a franchise with, it's Luka. It's still Luka. Like that doesn't change anything. But going into this series, what did we say? We was like, hey, man, if they beat the Suns, oh my gosh, well, then they could beat anybody. Then they have the confidence. But if they lose to the Suns, what did we say on this pod? You're going to learn what it takes to get to the next level and to win an NBA championship. And if you're Luka Doncic, this fourth quarter, not only did they target you because you were tired and you wasn't playing defense and everything, it was embarrassing because they were laughing about it. Like it felt like I was watching I used to be into UFC and I would have some favorite fighters here and there, and like seeing a fighter get woozy, and it's like, oh, here it comes, like this is bad. And the other guy's just like taunting, and you're like, here comes the knockout. It's like inevitable, and like, oh, your like heart's being ripped out because you just love that guy so much. But this is that moment for Luka. If he wants to get to that next level, you can't be singled out like he was and laughed at from the Suns bench and from Booker and Chris Paul and them just toying with him on defense. Like he became a laughing stock on defense tonight. And for him to get to that and get a ring, he has to get better. You can't be like that in the fourth tonight. And I'm hoping that this is a moment. I think it will. I think this is a moment for Luka in his career that he will watch and he will learn from, and hopefully he'll come back different next year.
There's a reason why, the finals MVP has been like, I went through the numbers. I went through the ages at some point this year. It's like always a 26 to like 32-year-old, right? It's always, Dirk was what, 33, 34 when he won his. You just there has to be some maturing at some point. And as mature as Luka is in his game and in his basketball IQ and all that, Luka was toyed with the way that he toys with other players, right?
Yeah.
That's wild. And you're going to hear a lot of people that parachute in that haven't watched the Mavs all year that say, oh, well, that's Luka Doncic. He's the worst defender on the Mavericks. He's the worst defender probably in the league. They're going to start throwing things out like that. They're going to start saying, well, Luka's as bad of a defender as Trae Young. He's one of the worst defenders in the NBA. You have to just keep attacking him. Like, you listening, probably watching the Mavs a lot, like, that's not true. That's not true this year. No. But after the calf injury, he's struggled a little bit, and he struggles when he has to put in a ton of effort on the offensive end. And he has to, again, the Mavericks start this game the same exact way they started game 1. They spotted the Suns 9 points. There was turnovers. There was a missed alley-oop from Dwight. There was, the shot clock. Luka got stripped. There was the missed 3. There was a Brunson missed a jumper. Like, the Mavericks were down 0-9 again, and Luka had to kind of pull them back in and had to just go Super Saiyan mode on them. And that took so much out of him that he didn't have anything else for defense in the fourth quarter. And it goes back to Isaac's point. This has to be a moment for him because he's got to be in better shape. He's got to be in better shape. You have to be in such incredible shape to win in the playoffs. It's so hard to get to that level. And this is one of the reasons why. And
that you can say that the Mavericks didn't even have a shot through 3 quarters without Luka. Like, he was insane. Like, offensive wise, he's insane. You can also say Luka had his best defensive year, and he wasn't a black hole on defense this season that some people parachuting in right now didn't know. You can say all these things and say he's a top 5 player in the NBA like I am, but also say there is another level that you have to be able to get to on the biggest stage of the NBA in the playoffs in the fourth quarter. You can't be embarrassed like Luka was tonight if you want to win a ring. And so I'm sure coming up in the second segment, let's talk about the other wake-up calls for it. Like, it's a wake-up call for Jalen Brunson. It's a wake-up call for this front office in the roster construction too. That also affects Luka some. Also, we know that
for sure.
But it's a wake-up call for everybody tonight.
It absolutely is. It's a wake-up call for them. We'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline, the best place to go check out the odds and stats and sports info and everything for the latest sports development, league reviews, news, including your basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, the run of the Kentucky Derby, Isaac's home state, in Kentucky. Go check that out. It has everything on BetOnline. You want to check out some of the series odds. The Warriors minus 310 to win the series against the Grizzlies now, even after losing that game too. The Celtics minus 120 to win that series after that dominating game 2 for them. So interesting odds and lines all the time. They have series props. They have NBA specials. They have, you'll love this one. Plus 15,000 to be the next coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James. Go check out that and more on BetOnline. It's BetOnline where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every single day. Now, make sure to check out Locked On NBA Big Board host Rafael Barlow, Dallas resident and our friend. From NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter that Chad Ford handed over to him, is joined by Richard Stamen, a.k.a. Mavs Draft, our friend, Sam Ferris, Leif Tulin, giving fans an in-depth look at the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's Locked On NBA Big Board on that feed on podcast and YouTube. All right, Isaac Harris. We've been talking about Luka Doncic and how this is a wake-up call for him. And it is, because you just start looking at the stats. That first half, he was incredible again. He was so good in that first half. Fourth quarter, 1 of 3 from the field. Hit that 1-3. And he was a minus 15 in that corner, like when the Suns absolutely were tearing through him. Oh, no, Luka was 3 of 5, hit 1-3, hit 2 free throws, and just had 9 points in that fourth quarter, which is pretty decent. It's just not enough to beat this Suns team, and he looked absolutely gassed in that fourth quarter. And now is the time. It's Jokic 2 years ago. It's Embiid this past year, where they just come in and they had an incredible offseason, and Luka will finally have a full offseason this year, which do we have to drink for that? Do we have to drink for that now? Luka gets a full offseason.
Actually, I think there is some summer stuff that he could be playing. But anyway,
but it's not going to be the same as it was with these weird off seasons he's had with COVID years and the bubble years and all that Olympics and all that stuff. So he's going to get a full year, and he has to come in and we have to hear the best shape of his life type things, right? And we have to see that, because we saw it with Jokic, we saw it with Embiid. Giannis has kind of always been there, but LeBron's had an offseason like that. We've seen it from so many stars over and over again, that they finally had that 1 year where they're like, oh, dang, I really have to start putting effort into my body, putting effort into this in the offseason. And I think that's just the huge key for this, because he just didn't have anything at the end there.
You know what I go back to? I go back to that JJ Barea pod.
Yes.
I think it was JJ Redick.
It was, yeah. ESPN First Take star JJ Redick now.
Oh, that was a great segment. But anyway,
amazing.
JJ Barea. This was maybe 2 off seasons ago. I mean, it feels like it was yesterday, but it was at least over, a year and a half ago. JJ Barea is on that pod with JJ Redick. They're talking about the brilliance of Luka Doncic, and it's JJ Barea that says man, when he actually figures it out, and he figures it out and he takes this serious as far as getting in shape and all of that, that's when it's going to be even more scary then, because the ceiling for the floor of where Luka's at is all-star and all this stuff. It's insane. He's still an amazing player, but for where he's at now to get,
you just said he's top 5 in the NBA,
yeah, top 5. Yeah. But for him to get to that next level, he can't be played in hunted like he was tonight. And that's why it was the combination of the crowd, the national stage, the biggest stage, fourth quarter, the laughing, the taunting from Suns and everything. I'm like, man, this is a moment that I'm watching, that if I'm Luka, if I'm tired running sprints this summer, I'm going to be fire up that fourth quarter again. Let me see that. I need that extra motivation.
Just play that loop of Devin Booker staring him down after scoring on him that one time, just put it on a GIF and NFT and just show it in his Sweeney or whoever, Greg St. Jean needs an iPad with that loop over and over again in front of Luka's face.
Devin Booker, yeah, he cracks me up. Dude makes a couple, makes an all-rookie team, couple all-stars, makes the playoffs one time, and now he's like, bro, I'm Kobe. Let's shift to Brunson real quick. Jalen Brunson has a total of 22 points in this entire series so far, which is just 2 games. He had 9 points tonight. 9 points. He had 8 points in the fourth quarter alone in game 1. So if you just want to, take away that of in calculate how many points he's had in, 7 out of the 8 quarters, he's struggling. And it's a wake up call to Jalen Brunson too of, hey, Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, this isn't Utah anymore. And it's the whole kind of thing with the Clippers thing of like, oh, struggling with length. Is there something with game plan and stuff too? But he seems really uncomfortable.
Well, and it's not even length on him. It's Devin Booker or Chris Paul who are not like they're not Mikal Bridges, right? And it's just a team defense. It's a team defensive scheme. Yeah. Think about this. How many times did Luka in this game specifically pass, like try and attempt to pass, and it went off a limb, or it got picked off, or it was off of, like it got tipped or something like that? This Suns team is just so interconnected defensively that they tip all these passes, and like Luka can't get all these crazy through passes that he gets in the regular season that we're in awe of. He can't get those through. So imagine Jalen Brunson with just a margin of error that is even smaller than Luka's, trying to get it through this Suns team and trying to do the things that he did against the Jazz when he was just one-on-one against somebody and he could just size up or measure up. And he did it a couple times in this game, right? Probably just those 3 times or 4 or 5 times he did it in this game. But it's just not the same. And the Mavs need anything from him. They need anything from him. And it can't be a 3 of 12 game again where he had just 2 assists and he had 3 turnovers. 2 assists and 3 turnovers. That's not the Jalen Brunson that we saw in the first round. And so I don't know. Do you take this as the Suns are a bad matchup for him, or the Jazz were just such a good matchup that it made him look, incredible? He scored 40 points in a playoff game.
Yeah. Well, the Suns are just a whole different animal. There's just they're in a whole different stratosphere from what Utah even is remotely thinking about being. I don't.
Oh no! Isaac lost words.
I did. I lost words on it.
Call it time of death. What was how many? 1,000? How many episodes are we in? 1,000 something?
Because I know our YouTube comments are probably flaming right now, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you are saying all this negative stuff about Luka. And it's like, well,
you didn't watch the game. You didn't watch the game then if you're thinking that today, because Luka was bad and Luka admits it. Luka is speaking to the media right now. He said, I've got to play better defense. That's it. That's a quote from Luka, right? And it's just so true that was the reason. Honestly, I just saw Reliably Vulgaris tweet this. Our friend, sort of, not really. He tweeted at me today. This is bananas. The Suns went after Luka 50 times as the screen defender, 50, and scored a casual 1.72 points per chance.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I don't know if Dinwiddie scores that on open layups right now.
Yeah.
That is insane.
But Brunson can't score the same amount of points as Davis Bertans. No. Dinwiddie scored 11 in this game. Reggie Bullock, scored 16 in this game. And I think, we were talking about, hey, if the, Mavs lose this series before the series, what's going to be the storyline coming out of it? Is it going to be the DeAndre Ayton series that the Mavs are coming out of the series saying, we have to go get another big,
my man played 18 minutes tonight, scored 9 points.
I know. And it's, you know what? It's like, I didn't even look at that outcome. I thought it was going to be either or, like he's going to dominate. And that's why the Suns, he's going to have these massive, stat numbers throughout the whole series. And Suns, if the Suns win, then it's like, oh man, Ayton, big time series. I didn't even comprehend Ayton just being like blah. And the Suns possibly, rolling through the series. But, that's the
Ayton
thing.
Played 4 minutes in the second half. 4.
Yeah, that's wild. 4 because Tony Brothers played more minutes.
2, just under 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. 2 minutes.
And that's why we go back to the front office of this coming out of this series. Like, let's just say it continues playing out like it does, which the series isn't over. It's not over.
Some people say that series isn't over until the home team loses, and so the Mavs have not been home yet.
They're going back to Dallas.
I know that I'm not sure that I agree with that at this point, seeing how bad these games have been. But let's see the Mavs at home for a couple of games before we're just like, it's over.
Yeah, but if it does play out, if it does continue like it is, I think it is a wake up call to the front office of, like if Brunson continues playing like this, because we've entered that next level. We just heard, I'm sure a lot of you guys listen, like Bill Simmons, Russillo, and some of them, they were talking about Minnesota the other day. And Russillo was making that point about Minnesota, like, dude, they just got to figure out how to win a playoff series. That's that next step for them instead of who's your closing lineup in a finals. The Mavs have won a playoff series. They've taken the next step. Now you got to really figure out who's going to get me to the finals and can play in the finals. Who's the number 2? Those big questions. And that's Dallas has to ask that coming out of the series.
And so coming up, how much is this a wake up call for the front office, for coaching, for all that? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Before we do, let me tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's impossible for your chain, local parts store, the dealer even, to keep all the parts that you need. So why would you want to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts at a chain store or dealership? And you also have to wait for it. RockAuto.com is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to RockAuto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in there. How did you hear about us box? They know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. It's RockAuto.com. All right, Isaac Harris, how much of a wake-up call is this fourth quarter for the front office? And we start with, we say that because this fourth quarter was so bad for the Mavericks. But I'm not going to just start tearing everything down and say, well, it's just Luka and nobody else. Just tear it all down from the studs, and it's Luka and nobody else can play. Because the Mavericks they're progressing through, and I don't think with this roster we expected the Mavericks to be in the finals, right? We did this podcast every day, all year. We're not expecting them to be in the finals. We kept saying,
guys, they could get swept, and we're still going to stay on this podcast and say it was a successful season. Like,
yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
We are. Like,
because you can't move the goalposts. Because we started this season saying, okay, for this iteration of the Mavericks, if they stay pretty much the same, and they did, except for the Porzingis Dinwiddie trade, then the next progression for them is get over the hump, win that playoff series. And they did. They went and did that. And now they're going against the best team in the NBA and looking completely outmatched. And you're like, yeah, that's it. The Mavericks have always needed to make another move. They made the Dinwiddie trade because they know they needed to make another move. What was the phrase that we were joking about? And having a grab your drinks. Remember we did the drinking game for flexibility, and then we also did the drinking game for
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table
because they wanted to get a seat at the table with free agents and stuff. So I don't think anything has changed in the front office, to be honest. I think they always thought this. It would have changed if the Mavericks had gone out there, and what if they had won? Like, they were, close to winning that game 1. There was a moment where you felt like, okay, they're in control of this game 2, and then all of a sudden it just went away from them. But if they had won these 2 games, then all of a sudden maybe it's, oh, this team is good enough. This team is ready. But it's been far from that. And so I think that would have been the change for me. But this team is what we thought they were. And they've always needed to make another move. They've always needed to, get better at the number 2 spot. And that stayed the same. We haven't seen anything from Brunson, especially in this series, but
because it's more about the other side than for me, I think it's a wake-up call to the front office more because of what they're watching from the other team than it is from your own team. To see what Chris Paul did tonight in the fourth quarter, and Devin Booker's over there with his warm-up on, smiling with the bench and having fun, and Chris Paul's putting on a clinic, and then Booker comes in rested and hits his threes and is like showing off and all that. And it's like, to have that duo, to have a second guy as good as, which is crazy that this is how old he is. He's still efficient now, Chris Paul. And it's like, to have those 2 guys like that's what you're watching, that saying, ooh, we got to get Luka to where Luka's wearing the warm up in the beginning of the fourth quarter and another guy's torching.
Chris Paul is one of the best point guards of all time, maybe the best point guard of all time. People are making that case right now. I don't think I would.
I mean, he's better in Magic. So
I was gonna say, I got a jersey for a guy on my shelf right now that's probably the best point guard of all time, but one of the best of all time. Devin Booker has been, an all-star level player for a while now. Jalen Brunson just hit what?
It's just funny because Booker just cracks me up because he's good. He's
good, very good.
He carries himself, like he's Kawhi.
Not even Kawhi. I mean, it's
with Kawhi's accolades. Like he thinks he's like, you would think he's like, bro, you've won like a couple scoring titles and a couple rings, like because of how he
been to one finals.
yeah one finals.
And so now
What about Tony Brothers though? He's been to finals.
Here we go.
Holy crap!
We said it at the top that I don't think either team got an advantage in this game
I'm not saying that from a Mavs angle. I'm just saying what was going on.
It was okay. So there were 26 fouls called on the Mavs, 28 fouls called on the Suns. So what is that? That's 54 fouls called. I looked it up. What's the most fouls called in one game in the playoffs? 83. Ironically, it was a 3 overtime game, so take that into consideration. Okay. 3 overtime game. Nets Pistons 2004. Jason Kidd played in that game.
Wow.
83 fouls were called, and Jason Kidd only committed one of them. I was like, dang, that's wild. Huh. So we're nowhere near that game, but ton of fouls called in this game. It was so back and forth that both teams were upset about it. And then one thing that was a big moment that I thought we could talk about, if you want to talk about like any positives from this game. Second quarter, beginning of the second quarter, the Mavs go on a 15-6 stretch without Luka, and it was Dinwiddie kind of taking over there at that point. He scored 8 points in that little run, and that was like the first time in this series, maybe the first time in the playoffs, that the Mavs have done well with Luka on the bench, and when Luka plays, and that was a positive thing. That was when the Mavs finally took the lead.
Yeah, I made the note that the Mavs outscored the Suns by 9 points with Luka sitting on the bench. And it's like, you just don't get that. And, you alluded to earlier at the beginning of the pod, it was a 3-point game with how much time left in the game?
11 minutes.
11 minutes. You're like, man, they have to, like, I was literally telling myself after one of those Reggie threes there, maybe in the late third, I'm like, they have to win this to have a shot. They got to win this game. Like, they're in this game. The floodgates, opened after that in the fourth with Chris Paul. But, the Mavs are hitting their threes, a decent amount in this series. They hit 30, or they hit 16 in game one. They hit, 17 in this game, 41% tonight. If the Mavs are, hitting 16 to 23s in a game, it's like, all right, yeah, let's do that. Like, I'm down for that. It's just it's the other guys with Luka. Like, we talked about Luka being tired and all that stuff, but he's got to have some more help with that. And JB's got to come through. I don't know what else.
I was gonna say, you want to talk about that flagrant foul on Ayton? That was so weird.
It was definitely an offensive foul. I hated it for Ayton in the moment, but
Ayton's going in transition off of a loose ball. The Suns get the ball. They pass it over to Ayton. It's Dwight Powell and Ayton just going one-on-one at the basket in transition. Dwight gets real up close to him and is going straight up. And then Ayton tries the Euro step thing where you throw your elbow and your hand over from one side of your body to the other with the ball. And he just clocked Dwight right in the chin. And you're like, okay. On a normal play, if he clocks Dwight in the chin like that, first of all, it usually doesn't get called because Dwight always gets hit in the face every game. But I don't know. He couldn't see where Dwight was. It didn't seem intentional to me. To make it a flagrant one was weird. This whole game was reffed really weird.
Super weird. There were moments. Bertans hitting 3 threes, was huge.
Bertans played a ton in this game.
He did. He played a lot.
18 minutes.
We talked about the fouls, but it did affect the Mavs in a negative way when it comes to
Dorian played 20 minutes. He was leading the NBA
in
minutes played in the playoffs, and he played 20 minutes in this game.
Yeah, and you look at the Suns. Suns were in the bonus with 5 minutes to go in the first. They're in the bonus with 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. It's like, what is happening right now? And then it was like the refs just flipped a switch of, holy crap, we can't have this narrative. We got to call it for the Mavs now. And then it was like every single time, it was going for the Mavs at that point. It was so weird of a game. That's why I was leaning more into more than normal of, ooh, Dallas has to win this game because it was so weird.
Yeah.
It's like they mucked it up. They won these non-Luka minutes. They're hitting some of these threes. Ayton was in foul trouble too. It's like, all right, we got some things maybe leaning our way a little bit.
And all the fouls slowed it down, which is what the Mavs want. They needed a game where they can impose their will as far as speed of the game. And this was the game where they were going to do it. They also shot 40% from three. They're shooting 50% from three through a decent percentage of this game. At half, they were 10 of 20 from three. And so they got a game where it was slowed down to their pace. They shot well from three. And, and a couple guys were in foul trouble. But, yeah, that was a game where you're like, oh, they need that one. And the Suns just erase it just like that. And it's how good the Suns team is. And I'm going to take you back to our preview of this series. If the Mavs take any games, it should be a huge positive because that's how good the Suns are.
And to go on that point again, Luka Doncic before the series, after one of the practices before the series even starts, he says they're the number one team in the NBA, went to the finals last year. We have to play almost perfect game, follow the game, play hard. If Luka Doncic, your best player, is saying we have to play a near perfect game to beat them, like that's a statement to me. Like that's an honest recognition of where you're at,
yeah,
and how good Phoenix is, that before the series even starts, we have to be dang near perfect, and they just haven't, and that's that's why some Mavs fans are upset because we're not like, oh, the Mavs in 4 before the series, because like, well, we're being realistic too, and I'm sure some fans will hate this podcast for it, but they're just so dang good. Like, it's okay to love the Mavs and be an MFFL and talk about the Mavs every single day like we have for 5 years, and still say we're underdogs. Like, we're underdogs for a reason. And this Suns team is a really, really good team that won 64 games. And we'll see. Now it comes back to Dallas Friday night. We don't get 3 days off like Memphis and Golden State, but it comes back
3 days.
It's insane. Comes back to Dallas, and let's do this. Let's have the crowd, man. Like, if you have tickets or you can get tickets, let's show up. Let's show up for the Mavs and see if we can get this game 3, because then you get some momentum if you can win that game 3 and say, let's get this other game at home at that point. And so let's do this Friday night.
Let's do this Friday night. We will be back every single day on this podcast through the playoffs. People were getting mad that I was saying until the Mavs get knocked out of the playoffs. Okay, until the Mavs playoffs are over, finals or whatever, we will continue to do daily podcasts. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs, making us your first listen. Now make your second listen. Locked On NBA. Me and your boy Pat, the designer, on there today. So go check out Locked On NBA, YouTube, podcast, wherever. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!